there is an epidemic of police brutality in this country, and much of the brutality is motivated by racism, right? Black Americans are quite literally being hunted by racist whites, many of whom wear a badge and carry a gun. Hunted is the exact word that is used, even by prominent voices like LeBron James. It isn't safe. It's not even safe for black people, especially men, to leave their homes because of the problem of homicidal racist cops. That problem is so pervasive that it's not even safe for them. This, anyway, is the narrative that is relentlessly hammered into our heads by the media, Hollywood, activists, the Democrat Party. But of course, I repeat myself. Considering that this narrative is currently fueling violent mobs all across the country, and those violent mobs are torching our cities and unraveling the fabric of civilized society, I think it really matters whether it's actually true or not. And a close inspection of the relevant statistics, which we're going to get into now, along with a generous helping of common sense that I think we should apply to the situation as well, would seem to cast very serious doubt on this claim. It is the claim, again, that is sending people into the streets all over the country. I'm not sure there's anything to it. Now, the first thing that we should note is that police kill twice as many white men as they do, well, white people. It's mostly men, and we'll get to that in a second. But police kill twice as many white people as they do black people in a given year. Now, the white victims don't receive anything like the same kind of attention, but they exist, and they are more numerous than the black victims. In fact, the most egregious police shooting, I think, by far in recent history, is the one that claimed the life of a guy named Daniel Shaver. Daniel Shaver is a white man. He was unarmed, and he was gunned down while on his knees begging for his life in the hallway of a hotel. It's all on video. I mean, this is what they claimed happened to Michael Brown, but didn't happen in that case, where he was on his knees saying, "Hands up, don't shoot." Okay, that was a lie. That was invented by the media. Actually, it was a lie invented by, I think originally by Michael Brown's criminal friend, and then amplified by the media. It didn't happen. It was a lie. Here, it actually did happen. Almost exactly that happened. The officer who killed Daniel Shaver was not convicted of any crime. In fact, I wasn't sure if I was going to do this, but I think I will. I want to play some of this video for you of the Daniel Shaver killing, if you haven't seen it. Now, I warn you, it's extremely upsetting. It's not graphic. Now, the video I'm going to play is from the Washington Post. The actual shooting itself is blurred out, so you're not going to see anything. You're not going to see any blood or anything graphic, but it is very upsetting. I think it's necessary to play the video so that you can actually see it. And when you watch it, keep in mind that these are two white people involved. It is a white officer and a white man. No racial element. And yet this happened.
Okay, young man, listen to my instructions and do not make a mistake. You are to keep your legs crossed. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. You are to put both of your hands palm down, straight out in front of you. Push yourself up to a kneeling position. I said, keep your legs crossed!
I'm sorry.
I didn't say this in conversation. Put your hands! Hands up in the air! You do that again, we're shooting you. Do you understand?
Please do not shoot me.
Then listen to my instructions.
I'm trying to just do what you
Don't talk! Listen! Hands straight up in the air. Do not put your hands down for any reason. You think you're going to fall, you better fall on your face. Your hands go back in the small of your back or down. We are going to shoot you. Do you understand me?
Yes, sir.
Crawl towards me. Crawl towards me!
Yes, sir.
Don't talk!
Shaver was unarmed. He was trying to comply. He was weeping and begging for his life. They threatened repeatedly to kill him. So tensions are high. He's trying to comply, but he's scared. Who wouldn't be? Who wouldn't be? You've got. I think it was three cops responded to that scene. They got guns drawn on you. You're on your knees. They keep threatening to shoot you. And the instructions they're giving are confusing and contradictory. At one point, he's down on the ground, hands out, legs crossed. Then they say, get up and start crawling. And then they yell at him for not keeping his legs crossed. Well, how the hell are you going to crawl with your legs crossed? I don't even understand that. And nobody's got a gun pointed at me. It's like a game of Simon Says, except if you lose, you die, and he lost. Now, finally, the reason they shot him is that he was crawling and then his pants started to fall down. He made the mistake of trying to pull his pants up. Why did he try to pull his pants up? Well, it's just a reflex. And maybe he didn't want to crawl pantless on the ground like a dog. And because he tried to preserve a little bit of his dignity, they shot him dead. Now, this is horrible. The officer should have gone to jail, in my opinion. He didn't. Yet the point here is that there is no racial element. And also, not coincidentally, no riots over that. None at all. Speaking of horrifying video, there's also footage of the last moments of a man named Tony Timpa's life. Timpa, white man, was suffocated during an arrest, much like the George Floyd situation. He screamed and pleaded for his life 30 times before he died. He said he was dying. He was going to die. Officers on the scene laughed and cracked jokes as he lay there dead on the pavement. Now, I'm not going to play this video because there's only so much of this kind of content you could watch in one sitting, but you can find the video for yourself. It's online. Timpa also, by the way, the reason cops showed up is that Timpa called them to come help him. He suffered from mental illness, and he called them to come help him. They end up killing him in the process. Now, Timpa's case, like Shaver's, like so many others, never attracted the coverage or the outrage anywhere near on par with the killings of George Floyd or Michael Brown or Freddie Gray or any of the other black victims who have become household names. Some of these people who have been killed by cops are household names now. Are any of them white? No. But again, these white victims exist and they outnumber their black counterparts by a wide margin, in fact. Now listen, this is not about whataboutism. This is not about racial scorekeeping or anything like that. This is about addressing a narrative that is currently, as I said, fueling the destruction of our cities. We have to address this narrative because if it's not true, that matters, doesn't it? It really, really matters. And I'm saying it's not true. It's just not true. It will be pointed out, of course, that there are many more white people than black people in the country, so that the fact that more white people are killed by cops is not a surprise and does not in itself disprove the racist police narrative, and that's true, of course. But consider a couple of things. And before we even get there, I mean, it is true, but even so, even though there are a lot more white people, if this is a problem of racist police out hunting black people, even though there are fewer black people, you still wouldn't expect, based on that theory, right, of the racist police hunting black people, you still wouldn't expect for there to actually be more white victims. But there are. So that is a conclusion or a fact that is not predicted by the theory of racist cops hunting black people. Also, a person arguing in favor of the racist police narrative must have an explanation for the Shavers and the Timpas and the hundreds of other white victims. You've got your theory again. Your theory is racist police out hunting black people. Okay, that's your theory. But now you've got all this information over here that doesn't really comport with your theory. How do you explain it? You got to have some explanation. If all or most of the black victims were shot because of racism, which appears to be the theory, because every single time there is video of a black person dying in the process of an arrest or being killed by police, whether justly or unjustly, or if there's a story about it, Michael Brown, there was never any video. It turns out the killing was not unjust, but it did happen in any case. Anytime, the automatic assumption is that it's racism. Which would seem to indicate that all or most of the black people killed by cops are killed because of racism. Okay, well then again, why were the white victims shot in that case? however you explain the white victims, how do you know that the same explanation or combination of explanations doesn't also apply to the black victims? I mean, why do we assume racism for the black victims while assuming any number of other explanations for the white victims? If there are a slew of potential reasons why a white guy might get shot by the cops, including that he was the aggressor and brought it on himself, of course, because it's not like every police shooting is unjust. So I'm using this word victim. I'm just using it for brevity's sake. But of course, not every suspect who's killed by police is a victim. Many times this is the aggressor. I mean, there are many, when you look at the statistics of people shot by the cops, keep in mind that a lot of them were shooting at the cops, and that's why they got killed. That's not the case for George Floyd, of course, just like it wasn't the case for Daniel Shaver or Tony Timpa, but it does happen. Either way, when we talk about the white victims, there are a whole slew of explanations. How can we rule out all of those explanations from the start whenever a black person is killed by the cops? How does that make any sense to do? Now, Tony Timpa, why did he die? Maybe because the officers involved weren't bigots, but they were reckless bullies who didn't place a high enough value in human life. Okay? That's terrible, but it's not bigotry, it's not racism. If that's how we explain Tony Timpa or Daniel Shaver, I see that. It's clearly not racism because those are white people, all white people involved. But what I see is a power trip. I see a police officer who is on a power trip and just loves the fact that he's got the gun and he's got the power. That's how I explain it. How can we disqualify that explanation from the outset where George Floyd is concerned? You can't say, well, George Floyd, he was killed because of racism. That exact thing also happened to a white guy. So however you explain it for the white guy, how do you know that doesn't also explain this? Do you have additional evidence that this police officer was racist? If you do, present it. If cops kill white people too, how is the mere fact that a black man was killed by cops evidence in itself for racism? Also, and this part is politically incorrect. Okay, this is where the whole thing is politically incorrect, but now we're going to get to the really politically incorrect part. But it's a point that cannot be avoided, so I'm not going to avoid it. There are enough people out there who are avoiding hard truths. I'm not going to do it. Here's a hard truth. Crime statistics show that a disproportionate amount of violent crime in this country is committed by black people. Okay. That's the statistic. What does it mean? Well, this means that there will be a disproportionate amount of potentially hostile interactions between police and black people. That's what it means. So the real question then is, this is the question. It's whether a black person is significantly more likely to be unjustly killed in an interaction with police than a white person. The answer to that question would appear to be no. In fact, it was recently put, I think, in a pretty persuasive way by somebody on Twitter who compiled the statistics. Leonidas Johnson, I'll show you this. A black man, by the way, not that it matters, but this clearly is not someone who's trying to excuse racism. And he frames it this way, and he provides the links with all the sources. And this is the information anyone can go find for yourself. The information's out there. So 3 black people are killed for every 10,000 arrested for violent crime. Among white people arrested for violent crime, the figure is 4 in 10,000. So when you frame it this way, it's really hard to support the claim of a racist police epidemic. Once again, the racist police narrative is a theory. It's an explanatory theory. It's meant to explain why we see police brutality. Well, theories are supposed to have predictive power. They're supposed to predict the facts that we see. The racist police narrative does not predict that 3 in 10,000 black people arrested for violent crime will be killed while 4 in 10,000 white people are killed. Doesn't predict that. Doesn't explain it. Doesn't comport with it. It also seems relevant that white cops, they've done studies on this, white cops are not more likely to shoot black suspects. And that stat comports with the fact that many of the high-profile police killings, Baltimore, for example, I think about Freddie Gray, that happened in a black-run city with a black mayor, a black police chief, and many black officers were involved in the killing. Yet they still called it racism. I mean, if racism lies at the root of police brutality, and if black men are indeed being hunted, then we should observe a lot more brutality and, quote, hunting in departments and cities where there are more white cops and more white leadership. But that is not what we observe. If the theory was true, that is what we would observe, but it's not what we observe, so there's a problem with the theory. Also, as I referenced earlier, keep in mind that men are much more likely to die by police shooting than women. Much more likely. Okay? Now, this makes little sense on the bigotry theory. I mean, are the police feminists as well as, are they radical feminists as well as racists? How do you explain that? Or are men more likely to be killed by police because they're more likely to commit violent crime, which in turn increases the likelihood of an explosive interaction with cops? Now, if the latter is the case, when it comes to the men versus women disparity, and we all probably agree that it is, then why can't the same explanation be applied to the racial disparities as to the sex disparities? Why not? If the problem of police brutality affects white people and black people, and if it persists even under black leadership, and even at the hands of black cops, then it would seem that we need to search for an answer other than racist cops are hunting black folks. That's what it would really seem like. Now, I believe there is a problem with policing in this country. You know, what happened to George Floyd and Tony Timpa and Daniel Shaver, that was unacceptable, outrageous, happens far too often. But I'm not going to pretend that I think the racial narrative is true, because it's not true. The problem is not racist cops. There is no evidence for that. And there's a lot of evidence to the contrary. And the truth matters. The truth matters. It matters now more than ever. This is not like splitting hairs or being pedantic. This is the truth, and it's very important. The truth is that the racial narrative offered as an explanation for this problem ignores the facts on the ground, is incoherent, fails as a theory, and is promoted by race hustlers operating in bad faith and for their own ideological and political ends. That's the truth. Thank you for tuning into the Daily Wire, one of the fastest growing conservative media outlets in the entire country. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and a subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of our content.